You know that moment when you do something and immediately feel your stomach tighten, that familiar drop of recognition that whispers you have just betrayed yourself again. Not in some dramatic way, not with grand moral failures or public shame, but in the quiet, corrosive compromises you make every single day. You say yes when everything in you screams no. You laugh at the joke you find offensive because everyone else is laughing. You stay silent when you should speak. You speak when silence would be wiser. And with each small betrayal, something inside you fractures a little more. You have been living with this split for so long now that you barely notice it anymore, except in those moments late at night when you cannot sleep, when the performance finally stops and you are alone with the person you have become. You have tried everything to fix this. You have read about authenticity and boundaries. You have practiced saying no. You have worked on your confidence. But nothing addresses the fundamental problem, which is that you are at war with yourself. And this war is destroying the very thing you most want to preserve, your integrity. What you do not yet understand is that this inner conflict is not a character flaw to be fixed, but a signal pointing to something far more profound about the nature of consciousness itself. Hannah Arendt wrote about integrity, not as a virtue you possess, but as a relationship you maintain with yourself. This is the key that unlocks everything. We think of integrity as moral uprightness, as consistency between our values and actions, as some kind of stable quality we either have or lack. But Arendt understood that integrity is actually about whether you can bear to live with yourself, whether you can face the one who witnesses everything you do, the internal companion who never leaves, who sees through every justification and knows when you are lying to yourself. This witness is not your conscience in the conventional sense, not some internalized parental voice judging you according to external standards. It is simply you, aware of yourself, engaged in the eternal dialogue that constitutes thinking. And the crisis of integrity is not about breaking moral rules. It is about becoming unable to maintain this dialogue, about doing things that make it impossible to face yourself, that create such cognitive dissonance. You must either change your actions or stop thinking altogether. Most people choose to stop thinking. This is what Arendt discovered in her study of evil, that the greatest atrocities were committed not by monsters, but by people who had simply stopped thinking, who had severed the internal dialogue and thereby lost access to their own integrity. The banality of evil, she called it, and it applies not just to historical horrors, but to the everyday betrayals we commit against ourselves. Every time you act against what you know to be true, every time you compromise in ways that make you despise yourself, you are choosing not to think, not to maintain the relationship with the witness within. You are trying to escape yourself because self-awareness has become too painful. But here is what you must understand. You cannot escape this witness. You are stuck with yourself. You will spend every moment of your existence in your own company, and the quality of your life is determined by whether this is a relationship you can sustain. The inner conflict that destroys integrity arises when you try to serve two masters, when you attempt to maintain your relationship with yourself, while also meeting external demands that require self-betrayal. You want to be true to yourself and also be accepted, successful, loved, secure. And so, you split yourself in two. You create a public self that performs what is expected and a private self that knows the truth. You think you can keep these separate, that you can maintain your inner integrity while outwardly complying with whatever circumstances demand. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how consciousness works. There is no private self that remains untouched by what your public self does. There is only you, the one who must integrate everything you say and do into a coherent narrative you can live with. Every external betrayal is simultaneously a self-betrayal because the one who witnesses your public performance is you. Let me be very clear about what I am describing here. I'm not talking about the normal compromises and adaptations required to live in society. I'm not suggesting some impossible standard of absolute authenticity where you must express every thought and feeling regardless of context. That would be merely another form of self-indulgence, another way of avoiding genuine thinking. What I am pointing to is the specific experience of acting in ways you cannot reconcile with yourself, of doing things that make you unable to face your own internal witness. You know this feeling. It is the nausea that comes not from breaking external rules, but from violating your own sense of what you can bear to do and still be yourself. It is the shame that has nothing to do with getting caught and everything to do with having to live with what you know you have done. If this perspective is opening something up for you, consider subscribing. I explore these territories every week, and I would love to have you along for the journey. Arendt understood that thinking is fundamentally an activity of being two in one. When you think, you conduct an internal dialogue with yourself. You question your assumptions, examine your motives, consider alternative perspectives. This dialogue requires that you can respect the one you are talking with, that you can face yourself. And this is why certain actions become impossible for the person who thinks, not because they violate abstract moral principles, but because they would make it impossible to continue the internal dialogue, because they would create a self you could not bear to be alone with. Integrity, in this sense, is not about adhering to values, but about preserving the conditions for thinking, about refusing to do anything that would force you to stop the internal conversation that constitutes your humanity. But most of us have already done things that make us want to stop thinking. We have already compromised in ways that created unbearable internal contradictions, and so we develop elaborate mechanisms to avoid self-awareness. We stay busy, we distract ourselves, we rationalize and justify, we blame external circumstances. We tell ourselves everyone does it, it doesn't matter, we had no choice. These are all ways of avoiding the internal dialogue, of trying to prevent the witness within from fully seeing what we have done. But this avoidance has a cost. When you shut down thinking to escape your own judgment, you lose access to the very capacity that makes genuine integrity possible. You become, in Arendt's terms, thoughtless. And a thoughtless person is capable of anything because there is no longer an internal break, no longer a self that must be faced. The paradox is that the worse you feel about yourself, the more likely you are to continue betraying yourself. This is what most people get backwards. They think if they just felt better about themselves, if they had more self-esteem, they would have more integrity. But actually the opposite is true. The more you betray yourself, the less you can face yourself. And the less you can face yourself, the more you must avoid thinking. And the more you avoid thinking, the easier it becomes to betray yourself again. It is a vicious circle. You do something that violates your sense of yourself. This makes self-awareness painful. So you shut down the internal dialogue. But without that dialogue, you have no way to correct course, no way to learn from the experience. And so you repeat the same betrayal, further damaging your ability to face yourself, further necessitating the shutdown of thinking. I know many of you watching this have never told anyone what you are really experiencing. You have been carrying this alone, maybe for years, feeling like something fundamental is broken in you. But here is what I want you to understand. The moment you name this, the moment you acknowledge it out loud, even just in a comment, something shifts. You stop being alone with it. So let me ask you directly, when was the last time you did something that made you unable to face yourself? When did this pattern of self-betrayal begin? I want you to share in the comments, not because I need engagement, but because someone else watching this needs to see your words. They need to know they are not the only one. And if you cannot find the words right now, if it feels too heavy to articulate, just type this, I know this split. That is it. Just those 4 words. Because when you do, you create permission for dozens of others to say it too. Your honesty, your willingness to be seen in your struggle, it helps break the silence that keeps all of us isolated. So comment below. Tell me where you are in this. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in what you are feeling. Now let us examine more closely what is actually happening in this inner conflict. On one level, it appears to be a conflict between your values and your actions, between who you want to be and who you are actually being. But this is a superficial description. The deeper conflict is between your thinking self and your acting self, between the one who witnesses and reflects and the one who must operate in the world. And the reason this conflict feels so destructive is that both selves are you. You cannot choose one over the other. You cannot become pure action without reflection, and you cannot become pure reflection without action. You are condemned to be both the actor and the witness, and integrity means finding a way for these 2 aspects of yourself to coexist. Most approaches to integrity try to resolve this by giving you better values or stronger willpower. They tell you to clarify your principles and then stick to them. But this completely misses the point. The problem is not that you lack clear values. The problem is that you are trying to live according to values that are incompatible with your actual life circumstances, or you are trying to maintain an image of yourself that requires constant self-betrayal, or you are attempting to satisfy demands from your environment that make self-respect impossible. The conflict is built into the structure of your life, and no amount of willpower can resolve it. You can only resolve it by changing something fundamental about how you are living or what you are trying to achieve. Think about the situations where you most consistently betray yourself. What are they really about? Almost always, they involve some version of trying to secure something you think you need. Approval, safety, success, belonging, at the cost of your self-respect. You tell yourself it is temporary, that once you have secured what you need, then you can be true to yourself. But it never works that way. The compromises you make to achieve these things become part of who you are, and the external goals keep receding because they were never actually about those things anyway. They were about trying to escape the fundamental human condition, which is that you must live with yourself no matter what you achieve. And if you have become someone you cannot respect in the pursuit of these achievements, you have lost everything. Arendt wrote that the sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never made up their minds to be good or evil. They simply went along, compromised, adapted, told themselves it was necessary, avoided thinking too deeply about what they were doing. This is the real danger of inner conflict. Not that you will consciously choose evil, but that you will stop choosing altogether. That you will become a purely reactive being, responding to pressures and incentives without the internal dialogue that would allow you to evaluate your responses. You will lose the capacity to be a person in the full sense, someone who can think and therefore stand in relation to their own actions. But here is where it gets truly interesting. Arendt also believed that no one is beyond redemption, that the capacity for thinking can always be reawakened, that natality, the human capacity for new beginnings, means you can always start the internal dialogue again. The witness within never actually dies. You can ignore it, avoid it, try to drown it out, but it is always there waiting. And the moment you choose to face yourself again, the moment you resume thinking, the possibility of integrity returns. Not integrity as some perfect state, but as an active relationship, a continual conversation between you and yourself about how to live in a way you can bear. This is why confession, in its deepest sense, can be so powerful. Not confession to an external authority, but confession to yourself. The acknowledgement to your internal witness of what you have actually done and who you have actually been. This is terrifying because it means dropping all your justifications and facing the truth of your choices. But it is also liberating because it allows thinking to resume. Once you stop lying to yourself about what you have done, once you face the witness within and say, yes, I see what I did, I acknowledge it, then you can begin to ask what comes next. You can start the conversation again. You can inquire into why you made those choices, what you were afraid of, what you were trying to secure, and whether there might be other ways to live that would not require such self-betrayal. The resolution to inner conflict does not come from becoming stronger or more disciplined. It comes from becoming more honest with yourself about what your choices actually cost and what they are actually achieving. Most of the time, the betrayals you commit against yourself are not even serving their intended purpose. You compromise your integrity to gain security or approval, but the compromise itself undermines your capacity to enjoy whatever you gain. You sacrifice self-respect to succeed, but success without self-respect is hollow. You silence yourself to maintain relationships, but relationships maintained through self-silencing are not real relationships. The witness within knows all this. The part of you that must integrate these experiences into a coherent life narrative knows that what you are doing makes no sense. And the inner conflict is simply this knowledge trying to break through your defenses. What would it mean to actually listen to this conflict instead of trying to resolve or suppress it? What would it mean to hear what the witness within is trying to tell you through the discomfort you feel? It would mean acknowledging that your current way of living is not sustainable, that something needs to change, that you cannot continue trying to serve incompatible masters. But it would also mean recognizing that you have more freedom than you think, that many of the constraints you experience as external are actually internal, that you are often betraying yourself not because you have no choice, but because you are afraid of the consequences of being yourself. Arendt understood that freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the capacity to think and thereby stand in relation to whatever circumstances you find yourself in. You are never free from the conditions of your life, but you are always free to think about those conditions, to examine them, to question whether you must respond to them in the ways you habitually do. This thinking is itself a form of action, and it is the foundation of integrity. When you maintain the internal dialogue, when you refuse to do things that would make you unable to face yourself, you are exercising freedom in the most fundamental sense. You are choosing to remain a person rather than becoming merely a function of circumstances. But this freedom has a price. The price is that you must live with uncertainty, with the knowledge that you are responsible for your choices, with the loneliness that comes from refusing to simply go along with what everyone else is doing. The person who maintains integrity in Arendt's sense is not comfortable. They are constantly questioning, constantly examining, constantly checking whether their actions are ones they can reconcile with themselves. They do not have the ease of the person who has stopped thinking, who simply follows conventions or pursues goals without reflection. They are burdened by self-awareness, but this burden is also what makes them fully human. If what I am sharing here resonates with something you have been feeling, something you have not quite been able to name, then I want you to know you are not alone in this. There are many of us exploring these questions, sitting with these uncomfortable truths, learning to see in new ways. I create these videos for people who are ready to go deeper, who are not satisfied with surface answers, who want to understand rather than just feel better temporarily. If that is you, consider subscribing. Not because you need another channel to follow, but because this journey of understanding yourself, of waking up to what is real, it helps to have companions along the way. People who will not offer you easy fixes, but will sit with you in the questions. I will be here every week with another exploration, another perspective, another thread to pull on, and I would be honored to have you here as part of this community of seekers and thinkers. So if this feels right, hit that subscribe button. And if you found value in this particular exploration, let me know in the comments what resonated most with you. Your reflections often illuminate things I had not considered. Now let me address the question you might be asking. If integrity requires such constant vigilance, such ongoing dialogue with yourself, such refusal to do things that make you unable to face yourself, how is it possible to live in the actual world? How can you maintain relationships, hold jobs, participate in society, if you are always examining whether your actions are reconcilable with your sense of yourself? This seems like a recipe for paralysis or isolation. And indeed, many people who become aware of the cost of self-betrayal do withdraw, do try to remove themselves from situations that pressure them to compromise. But Arendt would say, this is a mistake, a misunderstanding of what integrity actually requires. Integrity is not about purity. It is not about avoiding all compromise or maintaining some untainted self separate from the messy realities of existence. That kind of integrity is actually just another form of self-deception, another way of avoiding genuine thinking. True integrity, integrity that maintains the internal dialogue, requires engaging with reality as it is, not as you wish it were. It requires acknowledging the genuine constraints and necessities of your situation, while also refusing to use those necessities as excuses for self-betrayal. It requires discernment, the capacity to distinguish between compromises that are necessary adaptations to reality and compromises that violate something essential in yourself. This discernment cannot come from abstract principles. It can only come from thinking, from maintaining the dialogue with your internal witness about each situation as it arises. You cannot decide in advance exactly what you will and will not do. You can only commit to continuing the conversation, to not shutting down thinking when it becomes uncomfortable, to facing yourself no matter what you have done. And this ongoing thinking will reveal to you, situation by situation, what you can bear to do and what you cannot. where the line is between necessary adaptation and self-betrayal. This line is different for everyone because it depends on your particular constitution, your particular history, your particular sense of who you are. No one can draw this line for you. You can only discover it through honest self-examination. What most people discover when they begin this examination is that they have been betraying themselves far more than was necessary, that many of their compromises were not actually required by circumstances, but by their own fears and assumptions. They were trying to secure something that cannot be secured, trying to become someone that does not need to face themselves. But once you commit to maintaining the internal dialogue, once you accept that you will spend your entire life in your own company, these strategies reveal themselves as self-defeating. You realize that no external achievement is worth the cost of losing self-respect, that no relationship is worth maintaining through constant self-betrayal, that no security is real if it requires you to become someone you cannot face. This is a radical reorientation. It means that the primary question in any situation is not what will bring you success or approval or safety, but what can you do and still live with yourself. It means that your relationship with your internal witness becomes more important than your relationship with any external authority or reward. It means that you accept loneliness, failure, insecurity, if these are the price of maintaining integrity. And paradoxically, once you accept these costs, they often become less necessary. When you are no longer desperately trying to avoid them, when you can face yourself regardless of external circumstances, you often find more freedom and creativity in how you respond to challenges. But I do not want to make this sound easier than it is. Choosing integrity in the sense Arendt describes is genuinely difficult. It means living with constant tension, constant examination, constant uncertainty about whether you are betraying yourself or making necessary compromises. It means accepting that you will sometimes get it wrong, that you will betray yourself despite your best efforts, and that when you do, you must face what you have done rather than justifying or denying it. It means carrying the weight of self-awareness, which is a real weight. The person who has stopped thinking is lighter, more comfortable, more able to just go through the motions. The person who maintains integrity is burdened by consciousness, yet this burden is also what gives life meaning. Arendt believed that the unexamined life is not worth living, not because examined lives are more successful or happy, but because examination is what makes a life human. Without the internal dialogue, without the relationship with your own witness, you are not fully a person. You are simply reacting, simply following patterns, simply being moved by forces outside your awareness. Thinking is what creates the space for freedom, for choice, for the possibility of living deliberately rather than merely being lived. And integrity is what emerges when you refuse to surrender this space, when you insist on remaining in dialogue with yourself, no matter what pressures you face. The inner conflict that destroys integrity is the result of trying to live without thinking, of trying to act without facing your internal witness, of trying to secure yourself in ways that require self-betrayal. But this conflict also contains its own resolution. The discomfort you feel, the split you experience, the nausea of self-betrayal, these are not problems to be solved. They are signals, calls to resume thinking, invitations to face yourself again. The witness within is not judging you. It is simply there waiting for you to acknowledge it, ready to resume the dialogue whenever you are willing. And the moment you turn toward this witness, the moment you start thinking again, integrity becomes possible. Not as a permanent state, but as an ongoing practice, a continual choosing to remain in relationship with yourself. So what do you do with this understanding? How do you actually live with the one who watches? You start by acknowledging that this witness exists, that there is a part of you that sees through all your justifications and knows when you are lying to yourself. You stop trying to hide from this part. You face it, and you begin the conversation. You ask yourself honestly what you have been doing and why. You examine your compromises without immediately defending them. You sit with the discomfort of seeing yourself clearly. And from this honest examination, you begin to see what actually matters to you, what you can and cannot bear to do, where your real boundaries are. Not boundaries imposed by abstract values, but boundaries discovered through thinking, through the dialogue between you and yourself about what kind of life you can actually live. This is not a one-time realization. it is a daily practice. Every day you will face situations that tempt you towards self-betrayal. Every day you will have to choose whether to maintain the internal dialogue or shut it down. Every day you will have to decide whether external goals are worth the cost to your relationship with yourself. And every day you will discover something new about where your real integrity lies, about what you can and cannot compromise without losing your ability to face yourself. This ongoing discovery is what it means to live with consciousness, to be human in the fullest sense. The integrity that emerges from this practice is not rigid or absolute. It is flexible, responsive, constantly adapting to new situations and new understanding. But it has a core that remains consistent, which is the commitment to thinking, to maintaining the dialogue with your internal witness, to refusing to do things that would make this dialogue impossible. This core is what allows you to navigate the complexities and ambiguities of actual life without losing yourself, without becoming merely a function of external pressures. It is what allows you to live with freedom, even within constraint, to maintain your humanity even in difficult circumstances. And here is the deepest truth about integrity. It is not something you achieve once and then possess. It is something you practice moment by moment, choice by choice, through your willingness to keep thinking, to keep facing yourself, to keep maintaining the internal dialogue, no matter how uncomfortable it becomes. The person of integrity is not someone who never compromises or never betrays themselves. They are someone who, when they do compromise or betray themselves, can face what they have done, can think about it honestly, can learn from it, can adjust their course. They are someone who remains in conversation with themselves, who refuses to stop thinking no matter what. So when you feel that familiar tightness in your stomach, when you know you are about to betray yourself again, pause. Turn toward the witness within. Ask yourself what this choice will cost, whether you can live with it, what it says about who you are becoming. And if you find you cannot face this witness with your planned action, then do not do it. Not because some external authority forbids it, not because it violates abstract principles, but simply because you must live with yourself, and you want that to be a relationship you can sustain. Choose actions you can face yourself after. Choose a life you can think about without shutting down. Choose integrity not as moral superiority, but as practical necessity, as the only way to remain fully human. This is what Arendt understood, that the inner conflict that seems to destroy integrity is actually the precondition for integrity. That without this conflict, without the witness within that creates discomfort when you betray yourself, there would be no integrity possible. The conflict is not your enemy. It is your guide. It is what keeps you human. It is what allows you to remain in dialogue with yourself, to remain capable of thinking, to remain free. Honor this conflict. Let it teach you where your real boundaries are. Let it show you what you can and cannot do, and still be yourself. And through this ongoing dialogue with your internal witness, discover what it means to live with integrity, not as perfection, but as presence, not as purity, but as honest engagement with the full complexity of your existence.